What is up, guys? Rick Cacus here, and today we are going to be assessing the Dawning live event for Destiny. Now, the Dawning hit Destiny on December 13th. It's been here for a couple of weeks, and it's going away soon. Therefore, it's an appropriate time to really assess the content added to Destiny with the Dawning live event and talk about its impact. Talk about the stuff it did well and the stuff it didn't really do so well in a very forward-looking way. A lot of times for this video we're going to be really talking about stuff that Bungie should maybe do better for the next live addition to Destiny, or stuff that, the Dawning did very well and Bungie should perhaps expand on, because in Bungie's last weekly update for 2016, they did say that 2017 would see continued support for the original Destiny. The only thing coming in 2017 isn't just Destiny 2 coming later in the fall. We are still going to get probably not a full expansion, but live events coming in 2017, and so therefore it's really important for us to give Bungie the feedback having to do with how this live event went. And for this video, there's no script. This is just me talking from the heart, talking from the soul as a Destiny fan, and let's get started. Let's get right into it with something that I think the Dawning did very well, probably more well than I thought it would do, honestly, and that is with the whole strike scoring system. The worry was that this would kind of just be a gimmick, that people would pretty much do the same thing they've always been doing, just with numbers on the screen. But thankfully, that seems not to be the case, and the biggest factor for why I'd say this isn't the case is the bounties that came with the strike scoring system. If there wasn't an entirely new row of bounties being offered by the bounty NPC, you probably wouldn't be as interested in this whole strike scoring system. But because, again, there's an entire new row of bounties, all those bounties offer decent, experience and faction rep to allow you to get loot more often, and that's all great. The Zavala bounties directly give you very desirable weapons and armor pieces as well, which is fantastic. So that whole addition of the strike scoring system, I think, was a very good thing for Destiny. It's really improved, how people are playing strikes. Before, you just tried to sprint through the strike as fast as possible because all that really mattered was getting it done as quickly as possible and doing as many strikes as you possibly could in the shortest time frame. But now, people are actually, at least for the time being, stopping and killing enemies. Who would have thought you actually want to kill enemies in a strike? I know, right? But this does seem to be overall a good thing for Destiny. It's improving, the fun people are having in strikes. It's improving the reason to play strikes, all of that stuff. However, that last point, improving the reason to play strikes, does come with a little asterisk. In fact, it comes with a very big one, because it directly leads me into my next point of something I feel that wasn't done in the Dawning, and it was my main concern. I'm sure if you guys are, have been on this channel for a while, you maybe have seen some of the videos assessing the content coming in the Dawning, and the first thing I said was, are we getting new weapons? I could not believe that all these gaming journalists got to talk to Bungie and none of them said, hey, are we getting new legendary weapons? Or, I don't know what the heck happened. I don't know why that question wasn't asked more readily, but, as it turned out, the Dawning came and it's going soon, and it's pretty clear that the answer to that was no. Yes, we got some new, well, in quotation marks, new exotic weapons, but we didn't get any new legendary weapons. And before we go on and talk about why I think it's such a big issue, let's talk about, well, what are we comparing the Dawning to? Because that's very important, because depending on what you're comparing it to, people are going to have vastly different assessments of the Dawning. If you're comparing it to a stick in the mud, you're going to think the Dawning is amazing. But if you're comparing it to Game of Thrones Season 3, it's not going to be that good. But let's actually compare it to some more realistic things. Instead of my very strange comparisons, let's compare it to, I think one of the main things is, and the most logical comparison for the Dawning, is Sparrow Racing 2015. December 2015 saw the addition of Sparrow Racing, but that was pretty much it. It didn't have this update to strikes. It didn't have, the new quotation marks, new exotics and all that stuff. It was just Sparrow Racing. And so in that regard, the Dawning was so much better. If you're comparing it to what happened with Destiny the same time last year, the Dawning did a phenomenal job. It was much better than what happened in 2015. So in that sense, you'd have to say that the Dawning is very good. However, you could just as easily compare it to, and I think another fair comparison would be to another live event, the April update. And in that sense, the Dawning doesn't do so well. And that's why I'm really talking about weapons right now, because the April update added a ton of new weapons. It added new Queen's weapons. It added new weapons for leveling up your Prison of Elders factions. It added a bunch of old weapons back into the game, like the LDR, the Longbow Synthesis, all that stuff. And the Dawning added none of that. Like, not even like part of that. It didn't add new weapons at all. It didn't even bring back weapons. And that is really, in my opinion, not good, because like I said with strikes, they're massively improved. But if people don't have a reason to play, like if you don't have any loot you're really going for with Vanguard or for faction weapons or what have you, and you have all of the strike exclusive loot you want, why would you play strikes? Like, a lot of times people are playing, the fun of Destiny for a lot of people is that it's a loot-based game. Getting loot, trying to go for those god rolls is why a lot of people play Destiny. I got into Destiny because I was a huge Borderlands fan, and I love that whole loot system, trying to open all these chests and kill enemies and get more loot to try to make your character better. That is really what drew me into Destiny, and that's why I think a lot of people still play Destiny, that loot aspect. And so when you add no new weapons with this live event, it really diminishes people's desire to play. Yes, the new strikes are better, but how much time are you going to spend in those new strikes if there's nothing you want at the end of the day? Even with the remade strikes, they remade the Nexus and couldn't even add a new strike exclusive weapon? That is just lazy. And before I go on and potentially throw some more insults around, let's just kind of maybe take a step back. Maybe it isn't exactly lazy per se, but maybe the live team, whoever made the Dawning, didn't have enough resources. That's what a lot of people are going to say, is that people are making Destiny 2. Bungie, most of the studio, is hard at work with Destiny 2, and that totally makes sense, and that's totally what happened. It's not like people at Bungie are sitting around, vaping and just not caring about anything. They're working on Destiny 2, and you have a much smaller part of the Bungie staff working on the live events that we're seeing, like the Dawning. And again, that totally makes sense. You can't shift the main focus of the manpower off of Destiny 2, which needs a lot of work, into live events. But with that being said, you also can't have live events that are so bare bone they don't add any substantial new content. Sparrow Racing was pretty much the only quote-unquote new content added with the Dawning because it came with 2 new maps. Everything else was really just the same, except for the remade strikes, I guess. But again, with no desirable loot to go after, with no new weapons to go for, it's really going to fall flat. The main thing people, and by people I really mean Activision and Bungie, need to understand about shifting focus between live events and Destiny 2 is that Destiny 2 is not going to do that well if Destiny, the original Destiny, is in a sorry state before Destiny 2 hits. I mean, look at the new Call of Duty. Who would have thought? Who would have thought, honestly, that this Call of Duty, that Infinite Warfare, sold 50% less? Yes, of course, the reveal trailer and all of the dislikes it got kind of showed us potentially what was going to happen, but I think a big reason why Infinite Warfare didn't do that well is because it just didn't click with the Call of Duty community. And one of the main reasons was that they were really unhappy about microtransactions and the supply drops that were being introduced into the franchise, and really unhappy with how Black Ops 3 did it. It had entirely new weapons locked away in these supply drops for really low chances. The community was just not happy with that. And then when you have this, arguably silly looking futuristic game that comes out and they say, yeah, we're doing it all again with salvage or whatever it is, again, the community was not thrilled about that. And Activision thought they could get away with that. Activision thought that they could kind of hurt the Black Ops 3 community, they could hurt the Call of Duty community, and have something that a lot of people didn't want, supply drops, dangle something shiny and new with Infinite Warfare and Modern Warfare Remastered, but the community didn't forget. They didn't fall for the bait. And, you know, it may be kind of weird that I'm talking about Call of Duty in a Destiny video, but both are owned by Activision, and they could be planning something similar. And I think as a community, we should be stressing to Activision, look, you can't leave Destiny, again, in a sorry state just to lead up to Destiny 2. This whole franchise, you know, we've been promised since day one, since before day one, that Destiny, the franchise, not just one game, but the entire franchise would be like a living, evolving world. We'd have these constant additions of content, stuff would be always changing, we have these live events, we have stuff like Iron Banner and Trials of Osiris, which comes every once in a while, and that's all great news. That's why a lot of people are interested in Destiny. So you just cannot have these very bare bones, very underwhelming live events for the few months leading up to Destiny 2, or else the community, just like the Call of Duty community, the Destiny community is not going to forget, and they may be willing to move on to other games that are actually fulfilling their promises. Now, with all of that being said, kind of going back to just purely assessing the Dawning, you know, again, that's why it's so important, I believe, for these live events to really hit the nail on the head, to really add this desirable content, add a new reason for the Destiny community to play. And I'm not 100% sure the Dawning did that. Yes, it did do some great things. Yes, Sparrow Racing was better, but Sparrow Racing in and of itself, you know, a lot of people love it, a lot of people hate it. But the main problem is that once the Dawning goes, and I've said this a few times, but again, once the Dawning goes, Sparrow Racing goes with it. It's going to be very hard for the average player to get a bunch of people, to get 6 people together in a fire team to just play Sparrow Racing. I mean, how many people, especially just casual people, have trouble getting 6 people together for a raid? You know, and now you're asking them to do that for just Sparrow Racing? Like, way more people want to do the raid than Sparrow Racing, I would think. And so that is the main problem with Sparrow Racing, is for all the good things it did, the new Sparrows, the new armor, the new maps, there was a lot of good things added, but once the Dawning goes, Sparrow Racing is not going to be, you know, a force anymore. It's just going to kind of peter away and disappear pretty much altogether, except for people really going out of their way, going on different LFG websites and stuff, or really organizing with their friends to get together and play it. I really hope that Bungie just stops doing this absurd notion of letting Sparrow Racing die and actually does what is clearly the right decision, in my opinion, and bring back Sparrow Racing every 2 months. Even if it's just the same 4 maps and the same stuff, just bring it back every 2 months for like a week or 2 weeks and let us play it again. Now, in terms of the exotics added with the Dawning, the Nova Mortis, the Abaddon, and of course the Icebreaker, they're all so lackluster. I hate to say it, but lackluster is really the word that comes to mind. Yes, they're actually going to probably see play. I'm very excited to get to use the Icebreaker again. That's a great thing. And the Nova Mortis actually is going to see probably a lot of play. It's the only Void machine gun that's exotic in the game, so people are going to whip that out all the time. I was using, in fact, this week because it was Void Burn. But other than that, and just the way you actually go about getting these weapons, I think is just so disappointing, especially after Bungie did such a good job, I believe, with the exotic quests in the Rise of Iron, with the quest to get the Galahorn, going forth to all these different areas, learning more about the Iron Lords and the Galahorn, and then when you get the weapon, you actually get to utilize it in that like final mission. That was so sweet, and so was going and getting the Kvostov, having that, you know, heartfelt moment with Ghost and all that stuff. And don't even get me started, and of course the Outbreak Prime, the entire community had to solve this super complicated problem to then showcase how to actually get that weapon. That was all so cool. And then this time around, just to have, hey, go get some ability kills, do a strike, and then you get the weapon. Like, that just seemed so, again, lackluster. yes, of course, the people who are always defend Bungie and always defend Destiny are going to jump on me and say, well, you're expecting so much. This wasn't a paid expansion. Like, what do you expect? But my point comes back to, you can't let the Destiny community have such lackluster content and be relatively disappointed and be invested in other games and then suddenly reveal Destiny 2 and hope everyone's gonna forget all of this and come back. The best way to ensure Destiny 2's success is to make sure that Destiny succeeds as well. If you're going into Destiny 2 with a very happy fan base that's involved in the game and they're literally playing Destiny up to the moment that Destiny 2 comes out, that is great. That should be, in a perfect world, what happens for the Destiny franchise. In fact, that was what was promised pretty much with this whole notion of ongoing content, as I've already mentioned. And so again, to have these weapons added in a very lackluster way, it was definitely a little disappointing. And I also wish that they would have added a new exotic. They added the Zen Meteor for PlayStation with the April update. It was kind of disappointing that, again, they didn't go the extra mile, didn't add anything new, just remade some stuff. So, at the end of the day, is the Dawning a big disaster? It kind of seems like that's what I think. I mean, I've not been super upbeat, Teletubbies, the sun is shining, everything's flowers and daisies in this video. But I'm being realistic. I'm telling you guys, what I think, honest and truly. And I think that the Dawning at the end of the day wasn't that bad. It did a lot of good things. Sparrow Racing is better, and it's, still going to be available to play in private matches, although again, not many people are going to be doing that. The strikes are a lot better. Very happy that they added the weeklies of all the bounties, they added even more bounties, and they introduced strike scoring. And they introduced some new remade strikes just to kind of freshen up the playlist. That's all good news. The new armor sets are, they're great looking. It's just too bad that armor just is not as desirable as weapons in the game. There's really no argument to that. Like, if you're saying that, I mean, you might be the one person who does that, but I mean, people spend hours farming for the Imago loop and nowhere near as much time trying to get armor sets. It's just how it is in Destiny. Weapons are more desirable, and so when you don't add that desirable chunk of content, you have a lot of people who are left disappointing, a lot of people whose will to play the game goes down. But again, the Dawning in and of itself wasn't that terrible. It did a lot of good things, but it didn't do enough. And as soon as the Dawning goes, I guarantee, again, the Destiny community is going to slip into what it was before the Dawning, in that everyone is now going, okay, what next? Everyone's just now on edge waiting for the next piece of content, waiting for the next live update because they're already bored of the stuff added in the Dawning. We can't have that. We can't have everyone getting bored as soon as this content goes away. For Destiny to prosper, the next live event needs to improve upon the shortcomings of the Dawning. The next live event needs to be like an old live event. The April update, that was the pinnacle, as I said earlier, of what live events should be in Destiny. The content added, the desirable content added in the April update should be the cornerstone, should be the goal to which all live updates are trying to achieve. They don't have to add the exact same amount of weapons every time. They don't have to add the exact same content every time, but they need to reach for that level. They need to be comparable to the April update for Destiny to continue and for the community to be satisfied. There is 2 perfectly good, fantastically designed raids that very few people play because the loot you get is so outdated. There is, if you guys look at the database, any Destiny database, there is so many weapons still in the game's code from the original vanilla Destiny, from the Dark Below, that there's no chance to get. Remake these weapons, remake those raids. The next live event should have a remade Vault of Glass with remade Vault of Glass weapons, and heck, bring back some of the other year 1 weapons, the Pox Volo or the Psy Volo, whatever it's called. Like, you have archetypes like the high damaging pulse rifles. Right now there's 2. Right now you have the Parthian Shot and the Spare Change are the only infusible ones. if you go on a database, you can see that there's like 4 to 5 legendary weapons in this archetype that you could explore, that you could have all this different loot for, but for whatever reason, so much of this loot remains unupdated, remains impossible to get. It's time. It's one more year until Destiny 2. It's time to finally update the old stuff, update the old raids, update the old weapons, add some new weapons. It's time to go the extra mile. Go over the top of what is expected of you, Bungie. Do what you did with the April update. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it interesting. If you did, and if you agree with what I'm saying in this video, I hope you remember to support it. You know, the better this video does, the more people who actually do click that share button, the bigger chance that someone from Bungie hopefully sees this and says, hey guys, it's time to get our shit together, and hopefully says, hey guys, it's time to remake the Vault of Glass. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see more Destiny content from me, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCactus. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a good day.